Good good day, everyone. Welcome to this week's Business Times Weekly Nigeria. This is the second episode this week. I believe the first went on Wednesday. That was a bonus episode. We discussed oil and gas. Right now, because we are in earnings season in Nigeria, we're going to be talking a lot about the Nigerian stock market and the numbers that came out a couple of days ago. So, with me to discuss this is Folorunso. Folorunso is a technical quant analyst. So let's break it down for our audience, Folorunso. We have a couple of people who might not know um, what does a quant person do? What does quants mean, and what do they do in layman terms?
Um, on my perspective of it and how I approach it, it's simplifying that would be if you look at mathematics first or physics and applying those ready-made formulas into the financial markets, being able to see patterns over and over and then make predictions with those on what's likely to happen. That's really what the quants do in a simple term. Let's not overcomplicate it with the formulas that they go into. It's just that basic approach of saying we recognize this happens and this is what is likely to happen. But from a mathematical perspective, sometimes people go into physics and the rest. So that's what it is really.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, we'll get into that when we get to the earnings. But let's start off with a news headline that would make a lot of people happy. Like anyone in Nigeria, just the internet service is incredibly frustrating. Um, I guess Nigeria is one of the few places in the world where you have people carrying multiple handsets, and people are using dual SIM handsets. I on a daily basis have to toggle between the three networks. I'm not going to mention their names. So the Nigerian Communications Commission, the NCC, has directed telcos to compensate subscribers with airtime um, for poor network quality following outages across parts of the country. And I saw a few people who, I mean, I guess we're happy, even though some people might say, if you give me airtime, but the service is still poor, then you haven't really solved anything. So, do you think I mean, do you think one is, do you think that solves anything? And more importantly, looking at the country as it is today, the telcos will tell you that look, every other day we're having fiber cuts, we're having issues beyond our control. So, what do you really think is the middle ground? Because the telcos don't mind giving that airtime and things may just continue the way they are, and that doesn't solve anything. So, where do you think we'll go from here?
Um, with that news, for most people that, you know, spend a lot of time getting their airtime and credits and the rest to load up their data, it's sort of a happy moment, but it's a shared responsibility. If you look at Nigeria, like you said, with the power cuts and the working structure of FX policies, most of the equipments they use to give us that service, we don't even make them in the country. It's all imported. We still have the FX volatility. So it's a bit of a complicated one, but it gives us that opportunity to know that there's a level of customer protection in the country, and those at the top are making decisions to ensure that companies are not just operating as they like, and you know, important directions are being given to them on how to protect their customers. So, you know, we need to fix up the country. In some places, there's vandalism. They're breaking those things in international spaces. When you talk about 5G, some people are like, no, that is alien technology. We don't want that here. And they're taking out those towers. So we also have that similar thing in the country. People stealing tower metals for scraps. There are all those challenges. So the treatment, you know, eh, by giving them credit, it's just that benefit because they can do that. but it's a structural problem that needs deep fixing. Yeah.
Mm. Okay. And I mean, I've seen there's this Alton. Alton is the Association for Telecoms Operators, and there's this guy, got his name, who I think has left Alton, was probably like a face of Alton because everybody in the media knows him. Some people have advocated that look, we need to make vandalism of telecom assets a highly criminal offense, meaning that you could be arrested or should be arrested, or you probably face, maybe capital punishment. Do you think? Yeah, I know it seems odd, but when you look at it, there's just there's just a lot of vandalism, and I don't know if jail time really solves it in Nigeria, because when you think of it, you you have what, 6 months, 1 year's worth of jail time, then they're out. Um, do you think harsher measures like that would um would solve these issues? Because it is really a problem. The telcos keep complaining about vandalism, fiber cuts, literally always. Do you think that will solve it? Do you think harder punishments solve it?
Um, I wouldn't necessarily say that's the case. And with, going to the extremes of saying capital punishment, um, a lot of institutions face problems, but we don't send the government to capital punishments when they don't fix the roads that we all use. So there's that side to it. So creating a policy that they themselves would not be able to work with is not going to be the best. I believe it's all in re-education, and if basic needs are provided for, these people and rehabilitation in the society, you know, these problems wouldn't exist to this great measures as they currently do. Yeah, I think there's an opportunity for re-education and, you know, maybe they'll spend some money as part of their advert budget to let people know the impact of what it's doing to them. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on it. But I think capital
I
punishment is a bit extreme. Yeah.
I totally agree with you, because when I think of it, I mean, I don't recall. I know that for the oil and gas space, at the height of vandalism, which is still on, but it's kind of tapered a bit. At the height of vandalism, I'm sure every now and then you still see ads on TV and radio letting people know that look, you're vandalizing oil facilities. You can lose your life as a highly criminal offense, and just kind of letting them know that you're costing this country money and time. So I think that that's the approach the telco should use, because I haven't seen it anywhere. I haven't seen them advertising, please don't vandalize our stuff. And never can sell in your work. So I'll be watching for that. Next we have Glovo. Glovo is a delivery platform, and Glovo says that they have invested over 37 billion naira in Nigeria. I saw the story and I find it mind blowing, because first is that's a huge chunk of money, and I was just thinking how many businesses. I mean, yes, it's over a couple of years that they've done that, but I'm thinking how many businesses in Nigeria really have spent over 30 billion as the investment. Um, Obviously, if you're spending that kind of money, you're not going to make your money back or returns anytime soon. So how do you think that we can have more more businesses commit that kind of money to Nigeria? More importantly, I don't know if Glovo is profitable. I don't think they're profitable, because a lot of the online is a struggle. I mean, the biggest, or maybe one of the most prominent, Jumia. Jumia is very profitable last I looked at them. So what would it take to get more investors to really commit this kind of patient capital in the country?
Um, raising capital in a country where, our exchange rate is very, very volatile. And, you know, we all saw that when Tinubu came into the office, I think on the international space to the dollar, we lost over 70% in the value, you know. So being able to come into this space with that level of uncertainty, it's a very big move. And it's something that's been repeating over the years. So having that, it's not predictable, but having a predictable, foreign exchange certainty would really help businesses to be able to come into the space. Because if there's no certainty, especially where we're not a manufacturing company, the tools and assets they will use to move their goods and services are not manufactured within the country, then that's importation, So whatever value they talk about, they have to be speaking in dollars, and it doesn't help. We also don't have any consistency in our policies because most times, if a new government comes in, it's a total change, even though we know that they're the same people, they eat together, they go to
Yeah.
parties together, they recognize each other. It's just a party title. And yeah, so if there's no predictability in those two things for me, I think it's going to be hard to get more investors in. If I can guarantee that, oh, on the international space, when we calculate our profits, it's going to be stable, I'll be fine, And if everything I'm doing is within the country, it helps. But those challenges with policy uncertainty and volatile FX exchange rates, yeah, if there can be stable, it would definitely allow more businesses to come in with that level of capital. Yeah. As we see, people are strolling in with their dollars and trillions with the growth of our NGX, you
Yeah.
know. But yeah, once we can see that stability, more businesses will be open to even possibly listing on the exchange itself.
Mm. I'd like to see that because I think that one of the reasons why the exchange, Nigerian exchange, hasn't done so well is some of the most popular names aren't listed here. And they always would say, and I had this conversation in the last podcast, but look, to be honest, really listing on the exchange is it's not the most I mean, I may not get a fair value for my stocks or my company. So why would I want to list? That's an argument that I've heard people say. But hopefully things get better. I really would like to see Flutterwave pay start list, even though they have foreign investors and it's just not as interested. But I mean, one has to be hopeful in Nigeria. There's always what else? The opposite of hope, I guess, is sadness. So we have to stay hopeful. So let's come to the NGX. And I think in some ways this is the biggest news headline, arguably one of the biggest news headlines on the NGX this year. Um, I guess the next biggest would be if slash when Dangote is his refinery. But other than that, I think this in some ways is a monumental change for the NGX. So starting from next Monday, the 27th, you'd have longer trading hours for retail investors. That's going to be from 9:30 a.m. to 3:50 p.m. But for the broad stock market, the brokers, they the trading hours or trading activities start from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. So I'm just wondering for you, what do you make of the move? And is it something that is going to make your life easier as someone who's interested in Nigerian market?
It's a very, I'll say, positive move, definitely, in terms of the structural approach, because it gives that international confidence that, Nigeria is trying to progress into modernizing their exchange, so that not compete necessarily, but be part of that conversation with other exchanges, especially if we look at Africa, Ghana exchange as well. I believe their opening hours are longer than we are right now. and Kenya and Egypt, their exchanges should be much longer. Um, the only concern that I would say I have is that with the liquidity, opening the market for longer doesn't guarantee that more traders will come into the market. I know it overlaps a bit with some of the foreign exchanges, but it doesn't guarantee that we would have more volume or anything. Maybe at the opening hours, it could be of benefit because typically people tend to watch, oh, what did we open at? What are we closing at? And they're trying to get out of their trades or trying to buy in at the open. So we might get that spike in volume, but there's no guarantee that long term this will really be advantageous because of the fundamental issue that we have with liquidity. Liquidity is not time in itself. If the market is shallow, should we keep it open for longer? There are those conversations. And with the FTSE, Russell Frontier market upgrade that they gave us, well, that everyone's looking at in September, it's beneficial. It would help because that's when people that work with facts and say when it's confirmed, I'll make use of that information. So by September, we'll really see if it's truly and truly beneficial to us. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, I'd say for me, for me, it makes life more hectic. So because um, it now means that if you have a market closing at 4 p.m., first, I'm happy with it. I agree it doesn't solve liquidity, but well, it's a good thing. Um, it does make life more hectic because markets, typically when we had the market closing at 2:30 p.m. by 3:30, 4, you get the final closing figures. You may get it a bit earlier than that, but at least most houses have all their figures. So you have several houses you can compare the data with and say, okay, everything's correct. So by 4 p.m. you have that data, and then you can start to push. But closing at 4 means that you're probably looking at data by 5, 6, and so you have to digest the data. So it means that for a lot of the smaller firms, they're going to have to work for longer. I don't know if they are quite prepared with that. And honestly, um, I'm also mildly positively surprised that we've seen from the feelers I get that we've seen the brokers kind of embrace the extended hours because I was thinking and there is going to be a bit of pushback because for a lot of them it means the market is closing by 4, then you probably are still working to 6, 7, you're getting home 8, 9, 10. So I was for mine like maybe this is one of those things you're just going to see the proposal and they will come right, they'll kick it down the road, they get back to it. So it was interesting. I'm looking forward to Monday, which is just going to make life more hectic. But I guess hey, it's good for the market. Um,
Yeah. I think it would also be beneficial for the institutional investors, those that work in the international space where they have their 9 to 5, are Wall Street people. And if they have that time that overlaps, they could see the opportunity to invest as well in our space, So it gives them that time window to actually look into our markets as well. So there is some benefit too.
oh yeah, I think it will be good. I It's just that I think for a lot of people they're going to lose some sleep for the first few weeks while they get used to it, because that's I was looking at myself and I'm like, man, I don't know. I wish to get older, severely older. So that would be good. Now to the earnings we had and still have a couple of earnings out so far. Q1 numbers from Stanbic, Burger Pains, Unilever Nigeria, West Cement. Which of these earnings has which of these earnings has impressed you and why? And on the flip side, which of these earnings were you disappointed by?
I've had a look at Stanbic, because of their operating model. And we can see that in their institutional footprint across the NGX itself, especially with their ETF at the time. So it tells you that they do know what they're doing. You know, they cover banking, pension, insurance, they do asset management. So that structural strength that they have is really good. And the earnings really proved it. You know, I think their P is now about 4.6. Yeah. And they've made about 60% year on year. That's massive for any institutional bank. So for Stanbic, I'm really surprised at that growth. But the price, I don't think the price has really gotten to the actual, fair value. So I still believe there's still some upside to go with the share price itself. Yeah.
Mm. I totally agree with you, and I would say that for me, when it comes to Stanbic, it's I mean, if you look at it, Stanbic should probably trade in 2 times book value. So you might argue, hey, this is overvalue, but in reality, I say this with a bit of reference. The Stanbic is more of an asset management firm than a bank. So what? So the question is, if you're going to value Stanbic, if you value it as an because what you have asset management and the pension fund. So the question is, how do you value a pension fund and asset management firm? Because those are big parts of the Stanbic structure. And if we're to go by that, you probably will argue that there's still more upside. But if you're just going to use your book value, then yeah, I'd say it's over 2 times book value. It's pricey, but I like to call Stanbic a tier 1.0 bank because in reality, at the pace they're pushing, they probably in another 5, 6 years should have the scale of size asset wise that will put them tier one. Then I think for me, what else struck me? Um, a couple of the brewers dropped numbers, Nigerian breweries,
Hmm.
champion breweries, and I mean, what I found first is the revenue growth is quite poor, um, which is odd because we think of Nigeria and then everything, festivities and all that, but we don't. The shocker is we don't really consume as much alcohol as we think we do, because Heineken, which is the parent company for Nigerian breweries, which interestingly probably gives me. I mean, I get more color in the Heineken statements on
Yeah.
Nigeria than Nigerian breweries. Maybe for competitive reasons, a bit cagey here, but Heineken gave more color, and there was a section from the earnings release. And what they said was beer volumes contracted, premium sides doing well, um, malt is doing well, malt grew actually. So I kind of found that interesting because if if people aren't drinking as much what do you call it, the cheaper beer, the value brands, as you like to quote it,
Hmm.
then what are they drinking? I guess they're drinking sachet spirits here and there. So it's for me it's a cause of worry because if you can't grow beer volumes in a young population as young as Nigeria is,
Hmm.
uh, when are you? And yes, it's a global issue. Globally, everywhere around the world, young people are drinking less alcohol, more spirits and lighter stuff. But for Nigeria, also a huge population, big companies like that. If you have fewer people drinking beer, where are we going to be in 20 years from now? I mean, it's also possible that things could flip and something happens and people start to drink more beer again. But where do you see that? What do you think could be the future? Because it's looking like the only option left is um, you you're going to have to focus on the premium brands, but premium brands are more expensive, so you make more profits per head, but you're selling, so the how the beer industry used to work was your your cheaper value brands would give you scale. You make less profit, but you have size and scale from them. And then the premium brands would have fewer volumes, but give you higher margins. So if you don't have your size is shrinking, but your margins are increasing, at some point in time, aren't you going to get? Do you think they're going to get entirely squeezed out the market, or do you think they're going to say, you know what, I'm not interested in Nigeria again. This isn't working. Let's go.
With the beer situation, the honest truth is more and more people, especially in the younger generation, for their religious views and their health views, there's a current trend now where that's the focus. So I believe the desire to drink alcohol and beer is reducing. And the benefit they have is that they have other products, that are not alcohol focused. So there's that advantage to push that. And the other concern that industries that the Nigerian breweries is in is with counterfeits. They have that disadvantage. That is also everywhere in the country. So most people would rather import their drinks, and that is what we see with the event space. Most of the drinks that are being shared are imported, but the ones like beer that are not on the table is Amstel Malta and the rest, Maltina. Those are the assets or products I would suggest that they go into pushing out, and it's all in managing their books because this year they focused on reducing their debt, which was great. They were still profitable in their books,
Yeah.
but the focus was getting rid of the bad debt that they had. So with the if the if the interest in alcohol continues to decline, right? They have to adapt to the market. And I'm sure this is not the first time something similar will happen over the years. And it wouldn't be new to the Nigerian space, neither any other international space. Globally, we can see that alcohol consumption has reduced, and the younger generation right now are more health conscious. So they'll have to work with it, and also the consumer purchase in Nigeria, you know, they have to work with the population of the Nigerians. Our focus right now is health. And if that's what the final case is, they have to work with that news, adjust their books accordingly, their meetings, and what their targets would be.
Mm. Okay. Then I'll say maybe as we wind down, this last week, yeah, okay, we haven't entered the new week, so to say last week, we had the all share index at the all-time high. I think it closed a bit over above 225K and some fraction.
Yeah.
Um, and last couple of weeks, we've been getting this debate: is the market overpriced? Is the market overpriced? Uh, from a quant side of things, I mean, obviously, the last I checked, the RSI for the oil share index was probably in the 90s, either late 80s or 90s. But in the last couple of weeks, one thing I've seen is the RSI really, in some ways, RSI can still overextend it um, for God knows how long. So, uh, do you think, where do you think would be a pullback zone at this point?
Um, so it's important to understand that when the ASI started, it started at 100, right? And we need to factor in the exchange rate because the analysis that you do with the Nigerian value is not going to be accurate. Year on year, we've been having all-time highs. But it's important to note that the 2008 crash that we haven't recovered it. So till today, we still haven't recovered that 2008 high that we had when we look at the all shares in terms of the dollar value. That is the adjusted chart. So what I see right now is a recovery of that loss. If you're an investor at that time, you're still recovering those losses. So with the stable FX right now, it helps that we're approaching, you know, those prices that we saw years back. Right now, I wouldn't really say overpriced. With a pullback, maybe psychological levels like 250K, just because it's a big round figure, you know. But the
But
other,
we are 225K, so do you mean
yeah,
200K?
Yeah.
Or do you mean we hit 250 then pull back?
So with a pullback, it's really subjective because of the market cap of the actual ASI. I think the best
Mhm.
approach would be to really understand a pullback is to look at the individual indexes, you know. So your NGX bank, your NGX insurance, your commodity goods, and the others. If you look at those and then make your analysis from there, it's a more accurate reflection of what's happening. Because a massive pullback in MTN tells you that the ASI is going to drop. So that's not the true representation of our market. I know there's that confusion to say, oh, the ASI keeps doing all-time highs. Yes, it's nice and good for the books, but it's not the most accurate representation of our market. Yeah, so psychological wise, if we're picking the ASI on its own, I'll say around 250K. Yeah, it's just that psychological big round figure pullback. But fundamentally, if you really want to see the true pictures, is to look at those individual indexes to really see if you're overpriced or undervalued from that angle. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that because just doing the rough numbers in my head, um, if I take the NGX 30, the individual stocks there.
All right. Yeah, based on the ASI, as I was discussing before, yeah, I did a bit of digging on the available data that we had, and I tried to sort of span that 40-year gap of that 40 years of information about the ASI. And like I said, it's not really the true reflection of our market because of the concentration of companies like GT, Dangote Cement, and MTN. Any 5% move on those companies is going to drag the ASI down. So it's important to really note that. That's why I said we should look at the individual indexes for those companies and the individual indexes for the different sectors to truly understand the current market perspective. And with this coming week, UBA is really going to be interesting because their FY 2025 wasn't what everyone was expecting, especially people that invest based on dividends, you know. And like they say, if it's not written down, it's not guaranteed. So if they haven't written down that, it would be paid and everyone's just going off announcements, yeah, I get their concerns about announcements going out that dividend will be paid, but there's that there. So I'll be looking out for UBA. I believe there's going to be some massive pullback. Also with the extended hours, will give more people an opportunity to dump their stocks if they want to. And for those that will be scooping up for accumulation, all and well, good for them. I would also be looking at the consumer goods sector. Yeah, I believe based on my analysis that we should see a continuous rise in that sector. I believe that's the next rotation. And with the elections coming up, if we also factor in the presidential cycle, year three for me, from my analysis, is the most bullish. And although we're currently front running my analysis by a few months, because my analysis as of January, February this year was May, June would be the most bullish months, but we're currently front running that with all the massive growth that we've seen across the banking sectors. Due to the financial year reports that come out in April, there's that pullback, and May, June is usually that accumulation and explosion that happens. So yeah, that's there. But it's going to be an interesting week. And thank you so much for having me, Onome. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for coming to the podcast and hope to catch you some other time. Hopefully we don't have this issue with the network. I honestly haven't seen something like this before. So yeah, have a good rest of the day.
All right. Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah.